5 months ago they stood together, promising forever. They were newlyweds. A bright future ahead. But in just 5 months that promise was shattered, not by divorce, but by blood. A brilliant engineer, a loving wife, a shocking crime. How did a man who helped build the future of space travel become a suspected killer? Before we dive into this shocking case, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We bring you the most gripping true crime stories, and your support helps me continue to uncover the darkest cases. Now back to the story. Samuel Whittemore wasn't just any man. He was a highly intelligent aerospace engineer who worked at SpaceX, helping develop groundbreaking technology. He was the kind of person people admired, focused, disciplined, and ambitious. His wife, Margaux Nguyen Whittemore, was the opposite in many ways. A yoga instructor, she lived a peaceful life centered around wellness, positivity, and helping others. By all accounts, they seemed like the perfect couple. But in the early hours of February 19, 2025, something went terribly wrong. Reedfield, Maine, a small, peaceful town where crime is rare. The kind of place where people don't lock their doors at night. But that changed forever when first responders arrived at a horrifying scene. Margaux was found outside the house, unresponsive. The injuries she suffered were brutal, too severe for her to survive. Inside, Samuel's mother, Dorothy Whittemore, lay critically injured. Someone had attacked both women that night, and Samuel was nowhere to be found. Had he snapped under pressure? Was there a hidden darkness behind his success? Or was there something even more sinister that no one saw coming? What happened behind closed doors that led to such a brutal act? It was a quiet, cold night in Reedfield, Maine. A night like any other, until a frantic 911 call shattered the silence. At 4:37 a.m., police arrived at 51 North Road to a scene straight out of a nightmare. The first thing they saw was Margaux Nguyen Whittemore's body, collapsed outside the house. Her injuries were brutal. Too brutal for a simple accident. Her face was swollen, her skin stained with blood. She had deep head trauma, and her hands, they looked like she had fought for her life. What do you think happened here? A home invasion gone wrong? A random act of violence? Or was someone she trusted responsible for this? But that wasn't all. Inside the house, another horrific discovery awaited. Lying on the floor in a pool of blood was Dorothy Whittemore, Samuel's own mother. She was still alive but barely. Her injuries were severe. Blunt force trauma. Multiple wounds. The kind of attack that wasn't just meant to hurt, but to destroy. The officers moved quickly. They called for paramedics. But one thing stood out immediately. Samuel Whittemore was missing. No sign of a break-in. No forced entry. No weapons left behind. Just a scene of sheer violence and chaos. So what really happened inside that house? Where was Samuel? And why had two women, one his wife, the other his own mother, been attacked in such a brutal way? The clock was ticking. And the truth? It was about to take a very dark turn. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we have to go back. Who was Samuel Whittemore before that terrible night? Was he always capable of something like this? Or was there a side of him no one saw coming? The making of a brilliant mind. Samuel Whittemore was born in 1986. From a young age, he was obsessed with technology and space exploration. He was the kid who took apart radios just to see how they worked, the one who stayed up late reading about rocket science while others played video games. He graduated top of his class in engineering and soon landed a highly coveted role at SpaceX, a dream job for any ambitious engineer. Visual, SpaceX rockets launching, engineers working in high-tech labs. At SpaceX, he was known as a perfectionist. Smart, focused, maybe even a little intense. His colleagues respected him, but some say he kept his distance, never fully letting anyone in. But here's the question. Can intelligence and ambition hide something darker underneath? The perfect couple, or so it seemed. In 2018, Samuel met Margaux Nguyen, a yoga instructor known for her kindness and energy. She was everything he wasn't, free-spirited, social, full of life. Their love story seemed like something out of a movie. But here's where things get interesting. Publicly, they were the perfect couple. Friends saw them smiling at dinner parties, posting pictures from vacations, living a life that seemed almost too good to be true. But behind closed doors? Was it really that perfect? Did anyone see this coming? Some friends and family would later admit that something felt off about Samuel. One former colleague recalled. He was brilliant, but there was a coldness to him. He didn't let people in. Another friend of Margaux's mentioned. She loved him, but sometimes you could tell she was walking on eggshells. Did she know something we didn't? Did she see the warning signs but ignore them? As investigators would soon uncover, Samuel Whittemore wasn't just a man with a high IQ. He was a man with secrets. And the truth? It was about to change everything. She was warm, kind, and full of life. A woman who dedicated herself to health, wellness, and spreading positivity. So how did she end up the victim of such a brutal crime? Margaux Nguyen Whittemore was born in 1989, raised in a tight-knit Vietnamese-American family who valued love, tradition, and hard work. She found her passion early: yoga, meditation, and holistic healing. To her, life was about balance, about finding peace even in the chaos of the modern world. She became a certified yoga instructor, running her own classes and helping people reconnect with their minds and bodies. She had an energy that was calming yet magnetic, the kind of person who made everyone feel at ease. But was she at ease in her own life? A marriage that seemed perfect. But was it? Margaux met Samuel Whittemore in 2018, and at first, it seemed like the perfect match. He was disciplined and analytical. She was free-spirited and empathetic. Opposites attract, right? But as time went on, those differences may have started to feel more like cracks. A close friend later said, Margaux always made excuses for him. Oh, he's just stressed from work, or he's not really like that. But sometimes I could tell she wasn't happy. Did she sense something was wrong? Did she ever fear for her safety? Were there warning signs? Investigators began digging into the history of their relationship. There were no public reports of domestic violence. No official restraining orders. But that doesn't always mean things were perfect behind closed doors. Another friend shared. Margaux never talked about being scared of him, but she did say he could be controlling. That sometimes he didn't like her doing things on her own. Little things. Small red flags that at the time didn't seem like much. But looking back, were they signs of something darker? Her family described her as strong, independent, and full of love. But love can make people overlook danger, believe that things will change, hope that a bad moment is just that, a moment. So what really happened in that house on February 19th? Was it an explosion from years of silent tension? Or had she seen something she wasn't supposed to see? One thing is certain, Margaux didn't survive that night. But her story? It's not over. A woman was dead. Another was barely clinging to life. And the one person who could answer for it all was nowhere to be found. The manhunt begins. When police entered 51 North Road, they expected to find Samuel Whittemore inside. But he was already gone. No sign of forced entry. No sign of a break-in. Just a trail of destruction, and a missing husband. The search for Samuel intensified. Authorities immediately put out an APB, warning the public that he could be armed and dangerous. But where does a man like Samuel Whittemore go? A brilliant engineer, a meticulous planner, he wasn't the type to panic. And that made him even more dangerous. For 48 hours there was no trace of him. No bank transactions. No cell phone activity. Nothing. Then a break in the case. The arrest. On the night of February 21, 2025, authorities tracked Samuel to a motel outside Bangor, Maine. He had checked in under a fake name. When officers knocked on the door, he didn't resist. He didn't run. He didn't say a word. But the most chilling part? When detectives asked him about Margaux, he just stared at them. No immediate denial. No grief. Just silence. Shockwaves through the community. News of Samuel's arrest spread fast. The town of Reedfield, where people left their doors unlocked, where crime was almost unheard of, was in shock. Margaux's family released a statement. She was a light in this world and we will not stop until we get justice. Her friends, her yoga students, everyone wanted answers. How could a man of science, a man so methodical, snap like this? And then came the next twist. Mental competency in court proceedings. His defense team wasted no time. They filed a motion for a mental competency evaluation, arguing that Samuel was not in his right mind when the attack happened. Some experts claimed he showed signs of severe paranoia. Others believed he was fully aware of his actions. So what was the truth? Was Samuel Whittemore a calculated killer, or a man losing his grip on reality? One thing was certain. This case was far from over. Was this an act of uncontrollable rage? Or was it something much darker? What could have driven Samuel to kill? Samuel Whittemore had no history of violence. No previous arrests. No documented threats. To the outside world, he was the brilliant engineer, the man working on cutting-edge technology. But inside his mind? What was happening? Detectives combed through months of texts, emails, and witness statements, searching for a trigger. And what they found? Stress. Isolation. Pressure. According to close friends, Samuel had been struggling. The high-stakes world of aerospace engineering was wearing him down. One former colleague shared. He worked insane hours. It was like his brain never shut off. And when things didn't go right, you could see the frustration boiling under the surface. But was work stress enough to push him to murder? Relationship struggles behind closed doors. Margaux's friends told a different story. They said Samuel was controlling. That he didn't like when Margaux spent time away from him. That in the months leading up to the attack, she had become more distant. One friend claimed. She was starting to stand up for herself more. She wanted independence. And I think that scared him. Could this have been a crime of passion, fueled by rejection? Or was it something premeditated? Criminal psychologist Dr. Emily Carter weighed in. Crimes of passion happen in the heat of the moment, an explosion of rage, often fueled by jealousy or betrayal. But this case? It raised red flags. Samuel didn't just kill Margaux. He brutally attacked his own mother. Then, instead of panicking, he vanished for 2 days. Dr. Carter continues. That suggests an element of control. He wasn't acting blindly. He had a plan. Samuel was part of a world where failure was not an option. A place where pressure and perfection were the norm. One former engineer said, "It's a high-stakes environment. You're working insane hours, competing with the best of the best. If you can't handle it, it eats you alive." Was Samuel already unraveling long before February 19th? Had the years of stress, control, and pressure built up to a breaking point? Or was this who he was all along? One thing is certain. Something inside Samuel Whittemore snapped that night. But was it momentary madness? Or was it a man who finally acted on his darkest thoughts? Samuel Whittemore has been arrested. The evidence is mounting. But what happens next? And will Margaux's family ever get justice? Samuel now faces multiple felony charges, including first-degree murder for the killing of Margaux Nguyen Whittemore and attempted murder for the brutal attack on his mother. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. His next court appearance is scheduled for 30th of June, where prosecutors are expected to push for no bail. But his defense team? They have a strategy. His lawyers could argue that Samuel was suffering from severe mental illness at the time of the crime, making him not legally responsible for his actions. Another possibility? A crime of passion defense. If they can convince a jury that this was an emotional outburst rather than a premeditated act, they might push for a lesser charge, like manslaughter. But prosecutors are prepared. They claim the evidence of premeditation is undeniable. The brutal nature of the attack. His 48-hour disappearance after the crime. The fact that his own mother was also a victim. They will argue that Samuel knew exactly what he was doing. And for Margaux's family, that's the only truth that matters. Margaux's family and friends are demanding justice. Her sister stated in a public statement. She was full of life. She had dreams, plans, a future. We won't stop fighting until he's held accountable. The community is rallying behind them, pushing for the maximum sentence. But will the courts deliver? As the case gains traction, media coverage is exploding. True crime forums, social media, and news outlets are all asking the same question. How does a man who once built rockets for space become a suspected murderer? Some believe stress and mental illness played a role. Others argue he was a cold, calculated killer who finally acted on violent impulses. But one thing is certain. All eyes are now on the courtroom. What happens next could determine how justice is served. A brilliant engineer. A devoted wife. A life full of potential, shattered in one night of unimaginable violence. This case is more than just a tragedy. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the most unthinkable crimes happen in the most ordinary places. Did anyone see this coming? Was there a warning sign, some small clue, that could have stopped it? Or was this fate already written? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Could this have been prevented? Or was Samuel Whittemore destined to break? And if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to support us. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you deep, compelling true crime stories.